Okay. All right. Let's nothing can go right. That's not allowed for us in this timeline. We're going to verify that cool that we're live. I'm going to make sure that I can hear myself because apparently the audio literally just wasn't functioning before. Oh my gosh, I can hear my own goddamn voice. Apparently, I'm literally just never going to be good at this live streaming thing. I'm always going to have issues no matter what I do. That said, here we are. We're back. We only got like 5 minutes in before we were graciously informed that there was an issue with our audio. So I guess we'll start over and we'll start talking about this. Picked a few topics that I wanted to go over today, specifically because I had a bunch of stuff come up that I'd been seeing online. None of it was worth making a full video about, and none of it was worth doing a full live stream about. So I finally refined it down. I was like, okay, there are two things that I really want to talk about, and then on top of that, there are there's one thing that I want to talk about, but I haven't actually looked into yet. So we're gonna find out together, hopefully. But the first of these is a video of this content creator here that was posted by some conservative account that was immediately really funny to me because it was posted seemingly with a whole lot of effort to make sure that the person who made the video, this lady, did not get credit for the for her for her content because she wasn't credited in any way. She wasn't linked. Her name wasn't mentioned. And then they also cut out the bit at the end of the video. You know, if you've ever downloaded something from TikTok, you know what I'm talking about, where it has the creator's name show up, and that was also edited out, which I just thought was very funny. But it was a really dumb video. But more importantly, I think it is kind of indicative of a misunderstanding that I think a lot of lefties and progressives have that I thought would be worth kind of critiquing, I guess, and explaining to people who maybe aren't familiar with some of these issues and the ways to handle them, right? Because if you're a progressive person, if you've experienced marginalization, whatever, there's a chance that you haven't really had the opportunity to see like what it's like to quote unquote not be marginalized or not have those sorts of negative experiences. And so I figure, okay, cool. This will hopefully be kind of a learning experience for all of us involved. So the context for this video is apparently Delta Airlines did something that I would probably consider homophobic, but I did not look into it because I don't care. This lady then made a video, a 15-second clip saying she likes Delta because they stood up to the rainbow bullies. Now, this person, and no hate towards them at all, basically was like, hey, that was homophobic, that was transphobic. How would you like it if someone was transphobic to you? How would you like it if someone referred to you by he, him pronouns? And this is this lady's response to that. Content warning, insufferable voice, but also you're listening to me, so, get over it.
I'm so excited that you said this. Okay. First of all, you just assumed my gender.
And so this was like my first impression of this person is like 2016 era transphobia, that like you just assume my gender, stuff that even when I was transphobic I made fun of because like it's so fucking lame and boring and dumb. But okay, like this is where we're at.
Second of all, I don't give a fuck. I know that probably bothers you, but the difference between us is that I don't base my emotional stability on the validation of strangers. I know, rough concept, huh?
Okay, and so the video goes on from there. The rest of it is not super relevant to what I'm talking about. She's gonna say a bunch of stuff about the rainbow bullies, about the LGBT mafia. She makes some comments about how like she gets called worse names than rainbow bullies and whatever. And it's like, I don't care. Whatever, boring, lame, not what's actually worth discussing about this video. So the thing that I wanted to talk about, and I don't want to send no hate to this person who commented, because I mean ultimately I do think that the thing that they're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to talk about something that's important, but I do think that they're mistaken. And I kind of want to critique that there for anybody who maybe doesn't fully understand it. So the whole trying to put someone's bigotry back on them only works in a few particular. Oh, absolutely true. I mean, like it's always been the case that content creators saying that they don't care about what people think about them is like cringe and silly and like not accurate. Like, no, you care about what people think about you and about the things that you believe. Otherwise, you wouldn't be posting this. But okay, fine, sure. I don't base my self-image off of the perceptions of others, and I am apparently the first person in history to be able to successfully do that. Um, but what I guess people don't always understand is that this whole putting someone's bigotry back on them only works in a few specific situations, and more often than not it kind of backfires. So the number one thing that you need to kind of recognize is that doing this on the internet is rarely going to work. It really only tends to function in live, like face to face or maybe audio conversations. And the reason for that is because a person can just make up an emotional response to something, especially if their goal is to like make a political point. They can easily make up an emotional response to something. It's the same thing. I mean, I'm sure progressives do this to an extent, like acting overly upset or overly emotional about things when they're not really as emotional about it. So a bigot can do the same thing. They can just say, "Oh yeah, that doesn't affect me," whatever. The second thing that I think is kind of worth noting here is this is especially not going to work against a woman in a patriarchy. So in a live conversation, and this you've got to be able to read the room a little bit. There are times where if you're talking to a transphobic cis man, where calling him by just like without even mentioning it, just calling him by she her pronouns is going to make the point that you want, because it's going to piss him off. He's going to get really upset about it, because as it turns out, guys who have a really strong attachment to like being perceived as masculine are not very good at emotionally responding to being called in feminine terms. So that can sometimes make the point you're trying to get at. Although, one, that sometimes backfires and it just pisses them off more and they don't learn their lesson. And two, it's not as likely to work against a cis woman, just because, whether you like it or not, society in general does not perceive most masculine, especially like emotional or what's the word I'm looking at for personality traits, as a bad thing. Where men being called feminine is oftentimes like is considered an insult, because being feminine is in some way is perceived as a bad thing. It shouldn't be, but that's how people are. You don't really get quite the same problem in reverse. Now, there are definitely misogynistic things that you can do and say that you should not do or say about women on that front. It's the thing that like a lot of TERFs like to do, especially against cis women, where they'll find some cis lady who has some like masculine physical trait or whatever, and they'll mock them on that front, and like with no self-awareness, right? Oh, this person looks mannish or whatever, and it's really cringe and it's really pathetic, and it is just misogyny, so you shouldn't do it. But overall, it just doesn't have the same perceived effect. And so that kind of got me thinking about one of the issues that I think progressives and lefties kind of have, is like not recognizing that when you haven't experienced a particular type of bigotry or whatever, then you don't have the same associations with that bigotry being repeated. Because whether you like it or not, being called slurs or offensive terms or whatever is not just bad because a person's being mean to you. It's bad because of all of this other context and whatever that's attached on top of it, that this person that's saying it to you does not always have oh god, lost my train of thought. God damn it. Fuck, where was I going with that? Yeah, it's this. If you haven't experienced a type of bigotry, then right, you're not as likely to have been able to you're not as likely to have the same emotional responses to it, just by virtue of the fact that you don't have all that context. So the person who's being bigoted to you right now has not experienced all of the context, all of the repeated experiences that you may have had if you're a person who's experienced bigotry before. And so as a result, they're just not as likely to have that same emotional response. You sometimes get this, and I don't think they learned their lesson from it. You sometimes get this with white people who are like really upset and offended by being called like cracker or whatever, which I believe you can actually get banned from Twitch now. Good news, I don't stream on Twitch, I guess. But even then, I think calling a white person a cracker does not like actually convey the message that I think you want it to. I just don't think that they're going to learn their lesson, which is not to say, I mean, if you're being mean to some major like racist or bigoted whatever content creator, like I'm not saying you have to be trying to change their mind or anything, but if that's your goal, or if your goal is to make a point to them, then that might not be the angle that you want to go for. And so I think it's one of those things where if you spend some time understanding intersectionality, and kind of I guess like really considering and empathizing with the different experiences of bigotry that different people have, you'll start to get a little bit better at being able to critique and make a point to bigots in a way that they're actually, at least somebody watching is going to get the point. Because unfortunately, I don't think that anyone's going to get the point from seeing someone call her he, him, and then like act like she's going to get offended like that. Like, no, sorry, she's not going to. She has not experienced that, at least very likely has not experienced that kind of that specific like brand of mistreatment. So it's just not going to connect. And I mean, obviously different people have different experiences and, you know, handle things differently. It's why, you know, some trans people are not personally offended by misgendering. Although obviously if you're not personally offended by something, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't at least still recognize that it's a bad thing. Nonetheless, I hope that point has gotten across. I hope that it's clear what I'm getting at. There are just problematic ideas, bigotry, whatever, are complicated, and they're not something that you can always just immediately go back and apply like the exact same ideas to every different demographic and get the same results. And so that's I guess kind of the critique that I'm trying to get across here. But I mean, then, like, you know, as she goes on to talk about how the alphabet mafia or whatever, or what does she call it, the rainbow bullies, have called her meaner things and are notorious for being aggressive and whatever. And like, that's not true. LGBT people are not uniquely notorious for bullying. Like give me a break. No, that's bullshit. And I think most people know that. Like, LGBT people are not the ones chanting in the streets, Jews will not replace us, and stuff like that. Like that's very much a different demographic of people. LGBT people protest the same as any other demographic, and yet we only really treat one as if you, conservative grifters anywhere, conservative people really only treat one as legitimate, and anyone who disagrees with them as violent and pearl clutching and whatever. Seems like the type that would bully others based on her own gender and is afraid of others competing in that space for attention. She deserves more. I think I see the point you're getting at. And I mean, yeah, like this does come across to me in at least adjacent to some of the ideas that are expressed by like TERFs, and the way that like they claim that they're super anti-misogyny or whatever, but then like all of their insults are just like sexism, you know. Although I'll be honest with you, based off of this person's like TikTok profile, of which I've looked at like 2 videos, I don't know if this person really would particularly pretend to care about misogyny one way or the other. I kind of get the impression that they're just like a snotty asshole and not much else, which is just like dumb and cringe. And like, I just don't like, I can't even bring myself to care all that much. Like, if you know, it's not like this isn't art, this isn't a person, at least the impression I've gotten, this is not like an honest expression of a person's beliefs or of you know, their like ideology. It's really like dumb bullshit. We're critiquing this kind of like lefty perspective that that you can just like flip bigotry back on a person and expect them to suddenly get it. So I mean, I'm basically done with this segment, but the overarching point that I was trying to make, so I'll try and like sum it up here before we move on to the next segment, was just like talking to a cis woman who's transphobic and saying, oh, how would you like it if someone misgendered you, is not going to get the point across that I think you're trying to get across. They, especially on the internet, like you're not going to get that kind of reaction because that's not the kind of bigotry in general that a cis woman experiences. At least not in quite that same way. And again, like doing that to a cis man is more probable to have an effect. But again, I really don't think you should do that unless you're like talking to your like racist uncle or whatever, and you have an understanding of what it is you're saying, and you're not actually trying to convey some like problematic or harmful ideas with it. Because at the end of the day, like if you're really trying to just like misgender someone just to be an asshole, like I don't support that. I don't defend that or whatever. I really only think it's meaningfully effective when you're trying to make a point to a transphobic person, and you actually think that either they or someone watching is going to get it. Yeah, I mean, it is an attempt to like to fight fire with fire, and you really just need to understand when that works and when it doesn't, because there are situations where it does. And if we run into some like that, oh, actually, I totally even forgot to mention, there was a fuck. I was working today and I was listening to YouTube videos or whatever, and one of the more recent ContraPoints videos came up. It was the the Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling one, and for the most part, I should probably just like close off of this person. I don't really want to be sending them like just have them on the front of my page for right now. We'll get to this in a minute. But there was something that I felt like she kind of misunderstood, and I wish I could remember the exact situation, the exact point that she was trying to make. But there was a point at which I don't think she was like fully aware of the fact that like that a cis woman is not going to have the same experience with transphobia as a trans person, trans man, trans woman, non-binary person, whatever. And I just think like she made like kind of a weak point somewhere towards the middle of the video. Maybe at some point I will just like remember it and I will shout it out. But yeah, that came up and I thought it was kind of that was kind of like part of what made this interesting to me. But what I wanted to get to, a bit of a more substantive thing. I actually kind of want to refresh this. I want to see if this person's gained more subscribers in this time. Nope, I guess not. So this is an account that has gotten a ridiculous amount of attention in like the last month. Like this account has been around for an incredibly short period of time, and they have gotten to 122,000 subscribers, which like we'll have our moment of jealousy. Okay, moment over. But like I came across them because of the "How does Bluetooth even exist" video, which seems to be pretty popular. I mean, it's their most popular video, and it makes sense to me why it would be. It was a pretty good video, I think, a pretty good explainer of kind of an interesting concept. And so then I decided to go back and like watch more videos in this person's videography. So I watched the "How does this stuff make sound?" Again, I think a pretty good explainer video, worthwhile. I like this type of content. It feels kind of similar to like Salmonella or Casually Explained type stuff, that kind of energy. And I desperately want more of that kind of stuff in the world, because they're interesting questions. What the hell is Bluetooth? Why does it, how does it work? How does a record or a cassette tape make sound? Like those are worthwhile questions, and people explaining it in a way that people are actually going to learn from, I think is super worthwhile. I cannot recommend enough like Theodore Gray books for that. His books on the elements, molecules, reactions, and I just got his book on engines, and I've been reading that, and like I understand what a steam engine does now, and like that's cool. I wanted to understand those things. But looking at this, you may notice that one of these things is not quite like the others. I have watched 4 of these 7 videos. These 2, at least from what I understand about the topics, are pretty damn good. And then I watched their time dilation one, and I think it got something like a little bit wrong, but also I didn't spend enough time thinking about it to really like critique. It's done in like a cringy Gen Z slang bit, but like it's a joke. Like that's what they're going for. But then there's the science of getting girls, and this immediately called out to me because this could go one of 2 ways, and one of those ways is very, very bad. And I guess the good news that I have is like this video did not come across to me like somebody who is a principled misogynist or like actively trying to push sexism. This really did come across to me like a person who just doesn't quite understand the implications of what they're saying. So let's get into it. Let's talk about this. I don't think this person is like evil, at least from what I've seen of them. I think they're just
the journey to be
and not fully aware of what it is that they're saying and what they're getting at. First, we're gonna mute a goddamn ad because if I'm gonna be paying for YouTube. And yeah, like I said, hopefully if you've seen any of the like types of videos that I'm talking about, you'll understand what I mean when I say like this kind of attitude of content.
So you don't get girls. Fear not, I'm here to help. Using the power of science and psychology, I'm gonna make you the reincarnated male version of Regina freaking George. Let's begin.
Okay, wait, actually, is this super fast? Is this going? No. Oh, yeah, it is. It's at 1.75. Okay, I'll slow it down because I know I watch videos that fast, but I don't think most people do. So we'll go to 1.25 and hopefully that'll be good.
Lesson 1. The scarcity principle. Psychologist Dr. Robert Cialdini has famously proposed in his book, opportunities seem more valuable to us when their availability is limited. We see this quite often in marketing. It explains why billionaires would rather have a lame, slow car that's a one of one than an insanely fast, cool car that's in production. And it's also...
Okay, I don't know how true that is, that specifically, like that billionaires only want one-of-a-kind cars. I think in general it seems like it's more the brand association or the like perceived wealth that a given car has that's of value to a super wealthy or what's the word, conspicuous consumption, like from that perspective, I guess. I don't even remember exactly what I was saying there, but whatever, that's just a minor critique of the kind of the point they're making. Not a huge deal.
Why everyone tells you nice guys finish last, and why most of the time it's true. It's not because girls don't like...
So already, I'm very heavily critical of this perspective of, I guess, of validating this idea that guys who are nice are less romantically successful. And granted, this person does not go the angle that they could go, right? Like he's about to say that that it's not a matter of like women being bad at choosing partners or anything like that. But nonetheless, I don't really think this is a good angle to go for in a video. And it's the main reason why I was like, okay, I kind of want to talk about this a little bit.
Nice guys, it's because the nice guys make themselves readily available, and jerks don't really care. Subsequently, their availability is limited and they are seen as a more valuable opportunity. But what they don't tell you is you don't have to be a jerk to be scarce. In fact, a nice guy displaying himself in a way that makes him scarce is so rare that by using Dr. Cialdini's logic of scarcity, it should be 10 times more attractive than your average jerk. So how specifically do you do this? Well, say...
Okay. Immediately, I do prefer this to the way that a lot of other people talk about relationships. I do appreciate the fact that he's trying to at least make a distinction, trying to say that being a nice person and then following these other ideas that he's going to put forth is the correct way to approach relationships. So I do think that that's a good thing, and I would definitely rather people think this way than think in a lot of the really toxic, misogynistic, like actively, intentionally misogynistic ways that I think a lot of people do. But I think fundamentally, I think that the concept behind this video is a little bit broken. And the reason for that is if you're interested in romantic partnerships, if that's something you're going for, how do I get people to attracted to me, or how do I get girls interested in me? If you're someone who's interested in women, is not the correct, it's not the question that you should be asking. I think more usefully, some questions that would be more worth asking yourself are, one, why am I interested in this person? What is it about this person that I'm interested in that I am, that makes me want to pursue some sort of relationship with them? Two, how do I communicate myself accurately to this person? And three, and this is just more broadly taking a step back, like what are people looking for? So I think those are more meaningful questions, and I'll get into them a little bit more as we go forward. That I think just like in concept, this video is missing an important element, or is accidentally encouraging some kind of toxic behaviors. Even if I don't think that they mean to be.
Say you see a girl you like at a party, surrounded by dudes trying to rizz her up. You may think you don't stand a chance, but actually you have the best chance. Walk over to her and her swarm of simps, walk past, and while you pass, look at her and say hi in a friendly way. Keep walking, go talk to a friend. Bonus points if that friend is a girl. You saying hi and doing nothing else is essentially hanging a limited edition sign on your neck. Okay.
So, this is what I mean when I say that the question of this video is kind of fundamentally broken. The action that he just described, seeing that a person you're attracted to is having a conversation or is talking to multiple people and just walking by and waving hello and then continuing on with your day, perfectly legitimate interaction to have. Perfectly good way to go about talking to a person, go about engaging with them. In fact, I think it's in general probably a pretty healthy thing to do, right? But the problem is the reasoning behind it, is the goal behind doing that. So in general, like if you're attracted to someone, if you like someone, if you're interested in them, yeah, letting them know that they're important enough to you to like wave hello just as going about your daily life, without having to necessarily completely derail like whatever conversation they have, is fantastic, is good, is healthy, is cool. But if the reason that you're doing that is because you're trying to give yourself the like legitimacy of being secretly like, secretly less available than all these other people, like trying to be more alluring or whatever, like it's not healthy. That's not a good way of going about relationships, of approaching them. Totally taking like dating market too seriously, like taking it way too literally and kind of ignoring the human aspects of it. And one of the things I'm going to get into as I talk about this a bit more is all of these ideas that this person is going to be expressing fall apart if the person that you're interested in finds out that you're using them. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into it, but I kind of want to let him talk a bit more.
Heck, you aren't readily available like the boys in our Gremlin gang. You're something that needs to be pursued or lost forever. Lesson 2. The gain-loss theory. Building on the scarcity principle, the gain-loss theory of attraction explains more in detail why nice guys might seemingly finish last. A clever study tested this theory by having volunteer college students engage in a series of one-on-one meetings. After the meeting, the volunteer would accidentally overhear the experimenter describe them in one of 4 ways: all positive, all negative, initially negative but becoming positive, or initially positive but becoming negative. When asked later how much they liked the experimenter, volunteers would expectedly like the experimenter when the evaluation was completely positive, but surprisingly they liked the experimenter even more when the evaluation was initially negative but became positive. The findings
and so again, I mean, this makes sense, but this is not a system that you should be gaming, right? Yeah, absolutely. Someone might be more initially impressed with or interested in someone who they've won over, someone who initially didn't have a good impression of them, but that they ultimately found more interesting, or that they ultimately, ultimately won over, right? But you should not be dishonest with a person that you're interested in. You should not fake a negative impression of them or fake being uninterested and then like slowly transition into being honest with them, because you're trying to like trigger this weird like psychological reaction in them. I don't think that that's healthy, and I don't think that that represents a positive or healthy impression of relationships with with women, but with anyone in general. I don't know, the science, everyone who talks about this is always talking about the science of getting women, but like it's also, you shouldn't do that to men, if that's what you're into.
Support the idea that winning people over who had an initial bad impression is way more rewarding to us than someone who liked us all along. But you need to be careful if you're trying to use this on a girl, because trying to demonstrate that someone has left a bad impression can kind of be hard without being a jerk. A good way to do this subtly is through tone and body language. Also,
see, and this is what gives me the impression that this isn't like some awful terrible person, is that he is like trying to encourage not the worst behaviors. Like it to me feels almost like laundering a really problematic ideology without fully realizing that like the ideology at its core is problematic, is harmful. So yes, being subtly uninterested in someone without actively being mean to them is better than the alternative. But the whole idea of trying to game the relationship system to get someone interested in you is just broken from the start. It is just like, it is a dishonest way of engaging with the world. It is not an accurate or healthy way of engaging with relationships. And so you shouldn't do it for that reason alone. Not just because of the fact that it's mean or because of the fact that it's hurtful, but because it's literally just actively an unhealthy way of going about things. And that's kind of one of the overarching points that I have here. But
you need to ensure that once you have decided they've won you over, you convey that clearly. If it's not clear to the girl you've been won over and they just think you don't like them, they won't want to be around you, which is kind of a huge problem and leads us to the next bit. Lesson 3. Proximity. In lesson 1, I told you need to be scarce, but it's important to understand that you need to be scarce in terms of attention, not proximity. In a study on friendship formation, researchers asked nearly 300 MIT dormitory residents to list their closest friends. The researchers then looked at where the listed friends lived in the dorms. When someone lived one dorm away, there was a 41% likelihood they were listed as a close friend. As the numbers of doors increased, the likelihood decreased, so those living 4 doors away only had a 10% likelihood of being listed as a close friend. You need to be physically near the girl you like, but good proximity isn't just mutual geographical location, it's also frequency. For example, you have a better chance with a girl you see 10 minutes every day than you do with a girl that you see for 1 hour every week. If you don't
So this is an example, I guess, of quote unquote gaming the system that maybe honestly isn't all that unhealthy. In general, right? Like repeated exposure to a person, like spending more time with them without like completely taking up their entire life, I think is a reasonably healthy way of trying to get into a more meaningful relationship with a person, because it doesn't become too extreme all at once. So if you were taking away from this video, like I would call this, generally speaking, like good advice. Be reasonably close around someone without having your entire day revolve around them, and without it just being like really long stretches of time punctuated by not spending time with them. That's reasonable, and that's healthy, and it's also like it's just not really manipulative, because it's just like that's just how human interaction goes anyway.
Don't have good proximity, you stand no chance. So in such a case, you need to create good proximity artificially. But you need to be subtle about this. Change your route to class to pass her, join a club she's in, do what you need to do. But please don't be creepy. There's a fine line in trying to create proximity and stalking. Do not cross that line. Say you do have...
So, okay, good. Yeah, you should not cross that line. And I do think that like that some of these adjustments or whatever are healthy and functional, or are, you know, and acceptable, whatever. But I don't quite think that it's a responsible decision. And granted, this person is brand new to YouTube. Like I'm not expecting them to have like a perfect understanding of this or have perfectly engaged with this. But it can be irresponsible, I guess, to not explain exactly what that looks like, what is creepy or inappropriate. Because yeah, changing the route that you go to class, as long as it's not something really stupid or ridiculous, to see someone more often is fine. Like you're just like you like a person, you want to be around them. It can be a perfectly reasonable, acceptable way to like get some more time in with them, some more interaction, without being weird, without being unhealthy, whatever. The problem is without giving people an understanding of what is acceptable and what's not acceptable, you're kind of setting people up to think, oh, well, okay, so what I'm doing is totally fine. Oh yeah, so now that I've changed my route to class to completely follow her across campus and then, you know, come back the other way, like, oh yeah, you know, the guy in the video told me to. Like, no, he didn't say that, but he didn't make it clear that that's not, like, that's probably not inappropriate behavior. And also just kind of on top of that, if you're going to join the club that somebody's into, to like get closer to them, make sure you're joining something that like you would at least reasonably join on your own. I've seen this before where people like completely fake interests in stuff in order to like get closer to somebody, and that's just not good for you. Trust me. Find something that like if you both have a mutual interest in it, so that you like you're getting something out of it besides this hypothetical possibility of a relationship. Because in general that should be your goal. Like you shouldn't just be like, oh, okay, it's either I get a relationship out of this or the whole interaction has been a failure. That's not good for you. It's much better if you recognize that early on and don't put yourself in situations where that's the only thing that you could possibly stand to gain.
You have good proximity, and you've made yourself seem won over. How do you retain her positive feelings towards you? Lesson 4. The Ben Franklin effect. Ben Franklin's secret to being so loved by everyone he knew was that he asked everyone for tons of favors. You may think asking favors of people will make them dislike you because you're burdening them with something, but quite the opposite is true. A study in
I think everyone's probably familiar with this. This isn't like super new information, but yeah, I mean, asking people to do you favors can make them subconsciously like you more. At least that's what I've seen. I guess I haven't looked through the paper to really meaningfully examine exactly how accurate that is. But in general, again, like, okay, fine, asking someone to do you a favor or whatever as a means of like kind of, you know, gauging how interested they are in you or getting a feel for what kind of dynamic you have is totally fine. But if you think that you're like quietly gaming the system, you're quietly manipulating this person into liking you more, I don't think that you have a healthy attitude towards pursuing a relationship, and I don't think you should be pursuing a relationship as a result. Yeah, I'm gonna get into. I think I'll go into what I think is healthier in a minute.
1971, at the University of North Carolina, had volunteers give out tests to actors pretending to be other students. Of course, the volunteers thought they were administering the study to other volunteers, but actually they were the subject. The volunteers were told the students would watch as they used sticks to tap out long patterns on wooden cubes. The students would then be asked to repeat the pattern. Each volunteer was told to try 2 different methods on 2 different groups. In one group, the volunteers were told to give encouragement when the students got the patterns right. In another separate group, the volunteers were told to insult and criticize the students when they made a mistake. Afterwards, the volunteers filled out a debriefing questionnaire, which included questions about how attractive and likable their students were. Across the board, the students who received the insults were rated as less attractive than the ones who received encouragement, concluding that when you do something kind to someone else, you like them more. So
I don't actually know. I assume there's more research on this anyway. I don't know if that's, with the information given, necessarily the conclusion that you would need to draw from that. Like the idea, okay, so I understand, right, experimental setup, the people that you insult you view as less attractive, even if you're just like artificially creating the insults, and the people that you're positive to, you subconsciously like them more, even if, again, the kindness is manufactured. I don't know if that necessarily follows to also mean that that the kindness itself is creating that positive opinion. It seems entirely conceivable to me, without knowing more about the experiment, that you could also draw from that that people responding to kind words or whatever are more likely to respond in ways that you find attractive, right? Like if you criticize somebody and then like they look upset or sad, like, okay, it's not crazy to me that that person might appear less attractive as a result, even if, again, that's artificial. But I don't necessarily think from the information provided, at least that he provided in his video, that really does lead to the conclusion that he thinks. But nonetheless, fine, like, okay, just like don't try and manipulate people into liking you. It's really weird.
You need to give the girl you like opportunity to be kind to you. A great way to do this is to ask for little favors. Ask for the time. Drop your pencil in her direction and let her get it for you. Ask if she'll help you with something you're working on. Stupid little stuff like this actually works and makes you more attractive as a human. But nothing I've said so far in this video matters at all if you disregard this next possible.
And so, like, okay, at this point, a person who did all of these things and followed the video, I think, with it, like, reasonable charitability, is not going to come across like a complete monster or anything. Like, they're not going to be doing horrible things. I just think it reflects kind of a problematic attitude towards relationships. So let me see. Let me get back to what were the things that I wanted to talk about. Oh, yeah. So what I think is a good kind of litmus test for whether or not you should be doing something in a relationship or in a prospective relationship is, how do you think that this person would feel or respond if they, 1, respect themselves, and 2, if you told them the stuff that you were doing? So an example of that might be, okay, if you're interested in someone and so you switch your route to class, you take a right instead of a left so that you run into them, and you, a month down the road, told them you did that, there's a good chance, as long as that's the only thing you did and there's no other context, that they're going to think that, oh, that was kind of cute. Like, that was just kind of sweet. Whatever, not a huge deal. By contrast, if you tell a person later on into your relationship, oh, hey, that time that I waved at you from across the room, I was actually secretly trying to make myself unavailable in the hopes of psychologically attracting you or whatever. Like, that's going to come across as weird. And that person is probably going to feel a little bit uncomfortable being in a room with you after you tell them something like that. Because it's like, screw off. Don't stop trying to like manipulate me. Like, even if these sorts of tricks work, like, I'm still an independent person and I don't really want to be thought of as just like some experiment to you, you know? And so I think that's just kind of the idea that's missing from this. And that's why I say that there are other questions that you should be asking that are more meaningfully worthwhile for long-term relationship goals. This stuff could even be all well and good for like immediate attraction or immediate interest. But it's not going to be super helpful or valuable for a long-term relationship because, again, like I said, if you're doing all of this stuff and you recognize that telling your partner, you've done all this stuff, you're now dating them, you're telling your partner all of the stuff you did is going to make them feel weird, you kind of either have to like tell them that and deal with the fact that they now feel weirded out by you, or you can just spend the rest of your relationship being like kind of dishonest about the way that you met and about the way that your relationship started. And I don't think most people want to do that. So that's why I think it would be better to just from the start begin by recognizing that you should have different goals in mind if you're trying to attract a person. Number one, like I said, is trying to fully isolate why you're interested in them in the first place. What is it about this person that you're interested in? And then from there, you can try and communicate who you are to this person in an honest and accurate way, because that's going to be the recipe for success in a relationship, just because two people who understand each other and like each other as a result of that are in a much better place than two people who are psychologically trying to play this like battle of the wits with each other. And so I guess in a more practical sense, what that looks like is isolating, okay, I'm attracted to XYZ person because of their intelligence. Cool. Now let's talk about things. Let's start up conversations. Let's interact. Ask them questions about the things that they're interested in. Just as like a simple life hack, if you want to make people like you, asking them questions about themselves is a good way to do that. And it's not really a manipulative one if you actually care about the stuff that they're into, because you're learning something about a person that you want to learn about. But like people love, like almost everyone has at least some topic that they could just rant about for hours, and people love being given an opportunity to do that. And if you're a good person and you're a person who's genuinely attracted to somebody, then that's good. Like that's going to get you a lot farther in that relationship. And then on top of that, having things to talk about yourself, communicate who you are, and the things that you like to do. It's good. It's good stuff. I'm realizing now I probably should have just like written these down instead of like remembered them. I'd have more poignant ways of phrasing things, but I hope that at least the idea that I'm trying to get across is coming across. And we're new to this whole streaming thing.
Most important truth. Lesson 5. The Discord mod effect. In 1997, a study done by Moranian and Blum came to an interesting conclusion. The two researchers surveyed 117 male and female college kids with 76 different photos of the opposite sex. They were asked to rank each photo on their attractiveness and emotional response. The study concluded that the most attractive features were not genetic traits, but instead came down to good posture, noticeable grooming, nice fitting clothing, a seemingly positive attitude, and a healthy weight. Let me repeat that. The most attractive features are not genetic. If you put a little effort in, exercise regularly, keep your chin up, shoulders back, shower daily, wear good clothes, and put a smile on your face, maybe girls won't be repelled by you when you walk in a room. You can do.
Okay, so in general, I think most of this is fairly correct, fairly accurate. It's a bit more complicated, and it's less the thing that I'm kind of concerned about. But I hope that at least the point that I'm trying to make has come across. He's gonna start talking about like pheromones and shit, and I just like I don't really care that much about that. I mean, I care about it in terms of how interesting it is, but I don't think it's a thing that people should be concerning themselves with. You really should not be, as much as like we can be super accurate and whatever and be like, oh, love is just a chemical reaction, like, okay, cool, but that's not how we think about it. That's not how we should think about it. That's very fun for like thoughtful side conversations, but it's not the way that we should be engaging with the people that we like. And I don't think that it's super healthy to kind of come at it from this perspective. But I hope that was kind of interesting and at least like a worthwhile topic of conversation. I kind of want to move on now. Like I said, this is just kind of a dumping stream of like some random things that I thought were interesting or worth talking about. But I don't know. I think it's at least important. And for the most part, like this person does not seem to have a super terrible like outlook on life. I didn't see any, at least off the top of my head, like super horrible comments or anything like that. So, that's good at least. And like best of luck to them. But okay, I did want to talk about Ben Shapiro, specifically on this whole Star Wars apparently just getting worse thing. It's in all caps, so it must be really serious. And I just want to see like what his thoughts are. My guess is that he's going to be talking about the director of the Rey movie, talking about how she likes to make men uncomfortable, or how it's about time that a woman has shaped a Star Wars story. I don't know. We're gonna find out, but I do think that it'll be hopefully an interesting experience, and I haven't seen this video before. We're just gonna let the ad play. Coolio. Yeah, I know this guy's a terrible piece of shit. He sucks. Let's hear what he has to say anyway.
A couple months ago, South Park did an episode in which they talked about complete destruction.
I am so... Jesus Christ. Did I put it on that? I don't think I put it on 2x speed. I have no idea why my YouTube is doing that. Okay, let's get back to this.
So, a couple months ago, South Park did an episode in which they talked about the complete destruction of the Star Wars universe at the hands of Kathleen Kennedy, who's just been awful. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, like the original series.
Oh yeah, everyone's been talking about, or everyone talked about that when it came out. The Star Wars South Park special. I don't even, or not Star Wars, Disney, whatever. That South Park special, Into the Pandaverse. That's what it was called. I've never really watched South Park. I've seen an episode here or there, and I saw like the first half of the movie and did not find it very good. I've been told the show is better than the movie, but you know, it's never been like an area of interest to me. But hopefully he's going to say more than just like reviewing the South Park bit.
And even the prequel series, which has grown on me over time, especially in comparison to the garbage that has been churned out by Disney. Now, Disney's done a couple of things that are right. Like the stuff that Dave Filoni is doing over there, that's good stuff.
Okay, I have to...
Star Wars
just really quickly, just to completely poison the well and make it clear exactly the kind of opinions that this person has, you know, if they're going to be super confidently talking about the quality of Star Wars media, I feel like it's important to make this known that at least when it came out, he was a big freaking Rise of Skywalker fan, which if you're not familiar with Star Wars, it's like bar none the worst Star Wars movie. As a person who quite liked The Last Jedi and thinks it's generally pretty good, Rise of Skywalker is just like a fucking disaster. And it's just really funny for this like terrible, this person who's going to go on a whole rant about the quality of Star Wars and how Kathleen Kennedy is the worst or whatever. And then like he did love her most recent Star Wars project. I think she was behind that, right? And I don't know, I just want to poison the well. Like this guy is coming from the perspective of Rise of Skywalker being a good Star Wars movie.
Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels is stuff my kids typically like. You know, they made a couple of decent. Rogue One is good, but Kathleen Kennedy overall
Rogue One's fine.
Just destroyed the series. So South Park was making fun of Kathleen Kennedy for effectively having turned Star Wars into a woke universe of nonsense. They had Cartman having a dream in which he replaces Kathleen Kennedy. And here is the take.
Is there a problem, people?
No problem at all, Mrs. Kennedy.
We were just discussing ideas of what to do with the new Prince Eric movie.
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
Yes, Miss Kennedy, some of the execs are just expressing that maybe...
Well, then maybe we should go a different route than we did with Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones, put a chick in it and make her name it gay!
I mean, absent any other context, that feels really, I don't know, like Star Wars has not had any prominent gay characters that I'm familiar with. So that feels like if you're coming in here like, oh, Kathleen Kennedy's made Star Wars worse, like she didn't do the thing that you're making fun of her for having done, apparently. I don't know if Indiana Jones did that. I didn't watch the new Indiana Jones. I keep half bragging about that as though it's a thing worth bragging about, but I haven't seen it yet, and I'm quite happy with that state of affairs, at least at the moment.
Well, that in fact is Kathleen Kennedy's strategy, apparently. So Star Wars, again, one of the great IPs.
What do you mean? This is the thing I don't understand. If you're going to, like, I'm sure that there is stuff with gay characters that he could at least be accurate in assessing that there are gay characters in, but you're talking about Star Wars. The gayest thing that happened in Star Wars was the one lesbian kiss at the end of fucking Rise of Skywalker that got edited out for China, right? Like, it was a meaningless addition of something. It had no impact on the story whatsoever. It was as meaningful as giving Chewbacca a Medal of Yavin, which is to say completely pointless and devoid of any actual concern. So, like, I don't know. It just feels like if you're trying to build a narrative, maybe you should actually have like a leg to stand on.
In all of human history. I mean, it's a tremendous piece of IP. It's like tens of billions of dollars worth of IP. And they've now decided to turn over the universe to a person named Charmin Obaid Chinoy. So who exactly is this person? Well, she's mostly famous for having made a couple of nonfiction documentaries that won Oscars about feminism and anti-feminism in Pakistan.
Epic. Already 100% on board. Expert on Pakistani feminism and anti-feminism. Like, hell yeah, make me a Star Wars movie, please. That sounds potentially very good.
Which, that's fine, but what is that?
That's fine. Sorry, these people make this whole huge deal out of the fact that, like, modern feminists don't talk about, like, issues in the Middle East or whatever, which I guess Pakistan... is Pakistan still actually considered part of the Middle East? Like, it's, I don't know, just regionally. I don't know exactly how we cut that off. there. But like, talk about feminism in other countries outside of the US and serious issues of people, but then when it happens, like the best he can muster is like, well, that's fine. Like okay, I thought this was something you're supposed to be passionate about, but I guess not.
What does it have to do with Star Wars? What makes you think that you can transition from making a terrific documentary about, say, honor killings in Pakistan to now you're in charge of the Star Wars universe?
Presumably more things in a person's life. I can name one random fact about a person and then be like, oh, well, what gives them qualification to talk about this issue? It's like, I don't fucking know. That depends on context. Maybe they had really good interviews. Maybe she sent in really high quality writing. Maybe she's someone who's done a bunch of projects just personally that Kathleen Kennedy or Disney or whomever thinks would translate really well to Star Wars. Like, is that impossible? Are you just gonna draw one random specific event from a person's life and then pretend like that's the whole of their career? Like, am I gonna? I mean, you could do that with anything, right? Oh, Ben Shapiro wrote a really bad like thriller novel. So I'd be like, oh, you wrote a really bad thriller novel? Well, what qualifies you to talk about politics then? Like, fuck. Those are two unrelated facts. Without any connective tissue there, I've just said two things about a person and acted like that's a political point.
Like, where is that? How does that happen? Well, she then was a director, one of the directors, on Miss Marvel, the 2022 series from Disney Plus that literally no one watched and that no one wanted to watch and that no one cared about.
From what I've heard, everyone who actually did watch Miss Marvel actually really liked it. I still haven't gotten around. Like, I watched episode 1. It was just like more kiddish than I was feeling at that particular moment. But also that nobody cared about. It's really interesting to me that that's the argument that he's going with here, instead of like analyzing the quality of the thing that she was a writer on. Like, if she was a writer on Miss Marvel, and even if Miss Marvel was unpopular, if Miss Marvel was good and she was a writer on it, then maybe that's why she was chosen, right? And from what I'm told, at least, Miss Marvel was pretty good. So I don't know. Like, I just think that's such a it's such a revealing perspective, I guess, that like popularity is the only thing that matters here. No mention of quality.
Because it looked not good.
Oh,
and they've decided to put her in charge of the next Star Wars movie, which will focus in on Rey. You remember Rey, or maybe you don't. She is the star of the last Star Wars trilogy, in which they killed off all the characters you love in favor of characters that no one gave any hoots about whatsoever.
That's called creating new characters. That's a thing that movies do. Oh, it's like in favor of characters you didn't care about. First of all, at least for the first movie, and I argue for the first and second movie, people cared a lot about Finn and Poe, and I think Rey to a lesser extent, because she had more of a, like, I don't even think this is necessarily a bad thing, but she was very much more like the generic good guy, in the way that Han Solo is more interesting than Luke Skywalker, right? Like, I mean, Luke Skywalker is the main character of the trilogy, and he's more important to the overall galaxy, but like, we enjoy watching Han Solo's escapades more, I think, or at least a lot of people do. I don't think that that's, super controversial, but good God, dude. It's so revealing to me that this is his perspective on movies, that introducing new characters, trying to tell new stories without fully relying on like nostalgia bait is a bad thing. And it also makes sense why he liked the third movie more than any other ones, because it relied so freaking heavily on nostalgia bait.
No one has said the name Poe Dameron in years because no one cares.
I fucking love Poe Dameron. Sorry, he's like my favorite character, honestly, especially in The Force Awakens, and then I think in TLJ he's still pretty interesting, but at least he's sidelined a bit more. Randomly, I didn't know this until I watched it recently. The film Ex Machina came out the same year as The Force Awakens, and that movie has both Domhnall Gleeson and Oscar Isaac in it, and I just think it's funny that they both apparently starred in a movie together, or two different movies together in the same year. Killer movie, by the way. Ex Machina is fucking fantastic. Really, really good movie.
No one cares about Finn, and barely anyone cares about Rey.
People were like super disappointed in the way that Finn was treated, especially in the third movie. Like, you're just salty. Like, you just don't like these movies, and then you're just like salty about the fact that that some people do actually still care. Like, Disney wouldn't be making a movie out of this if they didn't think they were going to make money off of it. I know it's cynical and unfortunate, but like that's just the way that the world works.
They got rid of all your old favorites. They killed off Han uselessly and stupidly, and then they killed off.
Dude's still fucking emotional over a movie that, like, this angry over a movie that came out in 2015. Han Solo's death was like the best part of The Force Awakens, by the way. If you haven't seen it in a while, like, it's one of the most impactful and meaningful moments in the trilogy, and like really cements Han as a fantastic character, like a fantastic, like, redeemed, you know, character from who he was in A New Hope. So like it's just like he's literally, his childhood was these characters, and now he's upset that like their lives didn't just like end perfectly or super happily, like that they did experience adversity later in their lives.
Luke uselessly and stupidly, and then they killed off Leia absolutely uselessly and stupidly, and then they added beloved characters like Rose, an awful character who annoyed everyone, so much so that they literally wrote her out of the third movie, The Rise of Skywalker. Have you ever...
Oh my god. That's so fucking mad. It's, like, he's just, I cannot imagine being this, like, he's like, nobody cares about these movies, but then like he's still angry about them. Like, he's not even just, he doesn't even just care about them, like he's actively pissed.
Ever heard of data brokers? They're the middlemen collect...
Oh, yay, ad read. Thanks for at least changing your clothes throughout this so I can just skip through you talking about your stupid whatever service you're hawking.
Has been vpn.com/Ben Shapiro Show to learn more. The failure of Kathleen Kennedy's trilogy has been so dramatic that there's been like a whole new revisionist history set up where Last Jedi is a good movie when everyone knows that Last Jedi is absolute trash.
Last Jedi is the best fucking movie in the sequel trilogy. You are just dumb. You're just really bad. Like, you literally, you're a Rise of Skywalker defender.
From Rian Johnson.
Oh my god.
Whole new revisionist history set up where Last Jedi is a good movie when everyone knows that Last Jedi is absolute trash from Rian Johnson. Everyone knows that.
Why does he feel the need to mention the director's name? Doesn't that feel a little bit bizarre that he has to hit all of the buzzwords? Like, oh, it's not just, oh, I don't like The Last Jedi, or The Last Jedi is a bad movie. It's Last Jedi is a bad movie from Rian Johnson. Like, why do you care? It's just interesting. It feels like he's really trying to fire people up by like hitting them with the keywords that pissed them off back in the day. Because I think a lot of people who didn't like The Last Jedi probably haven't thought about it in a while and don't remember exactly why they didn't like it, you know?
Just an absolute scrap heap of garbage is the last trilogy under Kathleen Kennedy. So instead of shifting focus,
note that he's not talked much about Rise of Skywalker. I don't know. I just think that's kind of funny.
Again, why don't you just hand the next movie to Dave Filoni? Dave Filoni actually likes the series. Dave Filoni actually, likes the characters. Dave Filoni actually understands what he is doing in the Star Wars universe and what the universe is all about. Instead, Kathleen Kennedy has hired this person who also happens to be not just a documentary filmmaker about the oppression of women in Pakistan.
I love seeing him pretend to give a shit about feminist issues in Pakistan. Like, he literally cannot bring himself to care. Like, he knows that he can't just come off like super apathetic because like those are actually serious and important issues, but he's just like, you can just like feel how much he doesn't want to be talking about this.
Also, she was the first artist to co-chair the World Economic Forum in 2017. Well, I mean, those seem like great qualifications for a piece of high-octane adventure fantasy sci-fi entertainment. Well, so they asked her about the new movie that's starring Rey, apparently 15 years after the end of Rise of Skywalker. And here's what she had to say.
So the first...
That little awkward, like, looking down, like, I felt that, man. I get it. like you're waiting for the transition, but it hasn't happened yet.
Woman and the first person of color to direct a Star Wars film. It's set to be released in 2026. You can say that the force is strong with this one. Here's Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy.
I'm very thrilled about the project because I think what we are about to create is something very special. And we're in 2024 now. And I think it's about time that we had a woman come forward to shape the story in a galaxy far, far away.
You had a woman who shaped all the stories in the galaxy far, far away. Her name is Kathleen Kennedy, and she sucks. She's awful. She's garbage.
Literally, like, this feels like how a lot of men will be like, oh, well, how can a woman be president? Like, she's gonna be too emotional, she's gonna get too upset about things or whatever. like maybe Ben shouldn't be allowed to talk about Star Wars because apparently because apparently that's how he's gonna like react to it. He can't talk objectively about it. It is not lost on me the fact that the argument he's making here is literally just a woman should not shape Star Wars. Like, she's like, oh, it's about time that a woman shaped this story. Obviously talking about, like, it's about time for a woman to direct a Star Wars movie, because that's never happened before. But he's like, oh, yeah, we already had a woman, and she's bad. Fucking good stuff. Exactly what I want.
Her job, and in any fair universe, she would have been fired. But she's unfireable because she's a woman. Also,
that they fire women all the time. Okay.
The minute someone talks about historic IP, and the first thing they say is, well, we're in 2024 now, you know the next thing out of their mouth is going to be the stupidest crap you ever heard in your entire life. Or whether it's Rachel Zegler talking about, it's 2024 now, we don't need a woman waiting to be saved by a man, it's a feminist diet. By the way, Daily Wire, yes, we here at Daily Wire will take full credit for Disney having to completely reshoot Snow White, because we pointed out that not only that Rachel Zegler was saying this stuff,
he's also mad about Snow White. Who gives a fuck? Oh my god. Like, you could, like, feel, like, the raw emotion coming through his words here. Like, this is infinitely better performing, better acting than he was in, that he showed in Lady Ballers. Like, if this was the performance that he brought to that fucking screen, maybe it wouldn't have been such a disaster disappointment of a movie. But unfortunately, like, apparently he can only get this pissed off about women in Star Wars. Like, okay. Sure, man.
But then we actually committed to making a rival Snow White film. So in an attempt to head us off, a tiny company by Disney's lights, Disney had to reshoot the entire film.
Also, based on what? Is, like, what's your evidence of that? Is it literally just because I said so? Oh, we're taking full credit for Disney reshooting a movie that was going to probably be bad anyway, and was going to need reshoots anyway, because we decided to make our own movie? Like, okay, sure, dude. Sure. Yeah, I believe you.
Well, they're going to have to reshoot the entire Star Wars universe, probably. Because, again, I don't know how you blow IP this bad. But again, equity is the only thing that matters. Equity, equity, equity. We need a woman directing. How about you just make a good Star Wars film? You haven't done it for like a decade.
You haven't done it in a decade? I mean, they haven't done it in a while. They haven't done it since, They haven't done it since 2017.
The last decent Star Wars one was Rogue One. When is it, like, what?
Oh, yeah, maybe his opinions changed. Maybe he got clowned on too much for having terrible takes on Rise of Skywalker.
What do you guys do for a living? And the answer is they please themselves. They please themselves on the stockholder dime. That's what they do, because they like stakeholder capitalism. The World Economic Forum preaches it, after all. It's everyone. The world can be changed by entertainment. And this.
What does this person think that... First of all, the world can be changed by entertainment is like the thesis statement of your guys' whole media... your whole foray into making media is this like, oh, we're going to make conservative entertainment, whatever. But also, what does he think? Like, what does he think that stockholders care about? Like, stockholders want money, or shareholders want money. Like, I don't think that they're interested in not making money. In fact, Disney has historically been very, very successful with these sorts of things, and is only kind of recently that they've really fallen into any sort of rut. And even then, they're still an incredibly successful company. But like, no, they're not just messing around on stockholder, or, you know, on the shareholders' dime. Like, they're trying to make money, and for the most part, they're being successful in that. I don't know. It's just that, like, it betrays a complete misunderstanding of, like, not even just economics, because I'm not like an economist or anything, but like a basic understanding of how a business is run, just like as a concept.
This is why you hire directors who have no history of directing anything good in the sphere, and then decide.
You didn't make that argument. You didn't justify that. You said that nobody cared about or wanted to watch Miss Marvel, but you never made an argument that it was bad. And yet she wrote for Miss Marvel, and again, as far as I'm aware, people tended to like that show. So I don't know, like, it feels like that's an argument that you need to actually justify or defend a little bit.
The way that you're going to do this is by putting them in charge of the single most lucrative IP in probably all of human history. So slow clap for Kathleen Kennedy. She's done it once again. Put a chicken in her, make her gay. That's the way this all works. Are you tired of...
There's nothing gay. Why is that the thing that they keep coming back to? If it's not even a thing that you can justify in your own goddamn video. Like, you would think that you'd be able to you'd be able to like there has to be a clip from that fucking that South Park special that would have applied to the situation, but apparently not. Apparently there is nothing that they said in that actually makes sense or actually fits with the situation. So we're going to just like force LGBT issues ironically into a situation where they don't seem to apply, which is weird. You would expect them to not or to not like that and to not be a huge fan of that. Let's see here. Yeah, God, he really didn't even deal with any of the stuff I wanted to talk about. Well, I'm not gonna
This week, something wonderful happened.
Shut up. I don't know why is it going so fast. I'm not gonna go any further into Ben Shapiro stuff right now. I am kind of surprised though that he didn't. That he did not. Ooh. Okay, this is tempting. Okay, this is okay. Do we do the critical drinker video? That this has the potential to be legitimately one of the dumbest pieces of media ever made. Like, sincerely, this could be really, really stupid. Fuck it, let's see. I really want to see what a conversation between two people who, like, the two people who have the worst movie takes ever looks like. This may end up being really boring. Ooh, good pause frame.
Take a break from talking about, World War III and the impending burning down of all of Western civilization, and talk about the complete destruction of entertainment with Critical Drinker. Thanks for joining me.
Cheers, sir.
So, is...
You guys have so much goddamn money, and that was what you came up with for your... Okay.
So, is creativity in Hollywood effectively dead? Because they're taking all the old IP and they're doing legacy projects that fundamentally betray the nature of the IP. They're doing this all the time now. Either that, or they are making sort of fluff that has no actual creativity to it. They'll make a movie from the 80s, but they'll just remake it with a different skin. But there's no heart in it because it's not original. You know exactly what... You can see...
Okay, I mean, sure, like, you're just fronting a ton of stuff out here, which is annoying because, like, I'm sure that you could make some really good analysis content on this sort of topic, but, like, I don't know, just fronting it. I mean, I know they're editing it down into a 7-minute video or whatever, but, like, this isn't going to be substantive if it's literally just like repeating your opinions back to you over and over again. Yeah, Disney live action remakes are dumb. Say more, please.
See the moves before they're making the moves. Have you seen anything creative coming out of Hollywood recently?
When you're talking about creativity, I think it still exists. It's just not incentivized in Hollywood anymore because it's safer to make either a remake of something that was older or another sequel, like, say, the Ghostbusters Afterlife movie, because there's brand recognition with those things. And so there's the idea that you'll have a built-in audience. And I think a lot of the problems stem from movies just being too expensive now.
Whoa. That was a passable take. That was, yeah, that is pretty much why this is happening. It is safer. It is easier. It has built-in brand recognition. And I mean, he's not going to go the step forward and recognize like, oh, maybe the way that we structure our economy around just maximizing profits is kind of dumb or problematic, especially in the media sphere. But like, still, yes, this is it. And I hope that Ben Shapiro either like challenges that or questions that, because like that's not actually what he believes, right? Ben Shapiro believes that it's this weird, like this onslaught of progressivism and wokeness that is ruining media. It's people who hate the consumer or whatever and want to just like preach their ideology, which is not what Will is saying here, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. Like, I guess we'll see where this conversation goes.
If you're dropping $200-300 million on a film, you need a pretty solid guarantee that that's going to be financially successful. And the way they've done it is either we're going to do yet another superhero movie, or we're going to do a franchise film, or we're going to do a remake or a reboot of something that's got recognition. There's far fewer now of these mid-budgeted movies around, say, the $30, $40, $50 million mark, which they've got enough resources to do a good film, tell a good story, an original story, but they haven't got so much investment in them that it's got to be super safe. That's why I enjoyed a movie like The Creator that came out this year. Not a perfect film by any measure, but it only cost $80 million. It looks like it cost 2 or 3 times as much. The visuals are fantastic, and it's an original sci-fi story. We just need more stuff like that.
I mean,
Yo, wow. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the ideas that he probably draws from this, but like, yeah, that is a much more substantive critique of or perspective on movie making, on filmmaking in general, and like recognizing that, oh, there's an economic incentive here that's really, really bad and harmful to creativity. So I don't know, like, yeah, wow. It turns out when he's not being ridiculously exaggerated for his dumbass YouTube videos, like he can actually at least somewhat analyze media a little bit.
Obviously, Nolan is the king of this because he was doing this on, I mean, if you watch Following, which is on a zero budget, he's making terrific film on a zero budget, and then he has the ability to scale up. You do see a lot of these directors. Ryan Johnson's a perfect example. You give him a big budget, and he actually goes more off the rails with the big budget because it allows him to indulge all of his whims.
Taika Waititi.
Okay, so I do appreciate him at least coming to the conclusion that it's because Ryan Johnson is like super interested in making the movies that he wants to make. That feels like a bit of a contradiction to your earlier point or your earlier perspective that it's all like a lack of creativity. Like, no, this is a situation in which a person's creativity is not constrained enough, which is possible, which is a potential issue, but it just feels weird to be like, oh, modern Hollywood is too safe and too uncreative. Oh, also, when you give directors too much control, they get too creative and wacky. Like, I don't know, like combine those two ideas, because from the perspective I'm looking at, this is that does not make much sense.
He's another example of that kind of director where he, when he's doing things like Thor: Love and Thunder, he just looks like a child in a candy store who's been given unlimited money and just set loose, you know. And it's like there's nothing to rein him in, so he's just like coming up with ideas on the fly, and they're costing millions of dollars to film. They might get into the movie, they might not, but either way.
But how the hell does that? But how does that connect to this whole idea that it's a lack of creativity? I mean, if you're like, if that's your ultimate issue, why, like, this feels like this should be almost the ideal, like minimal studio forced input and just like letting directors run wild with what they're interested in, and then, you know, constraining them here and there, or, you know, taking time, slowing down to talk about things a bit more. Like, it's just, it seems so weird to me that this is that this is simultaneously the thing that they want to happen, and also it's a bad thing.
The end product is garbage because it's not focused. It's not they're not working with limited. The end product is garbage because
I have to say, I know that this is a controversial take. MODOK was like one of the few things that brought me joy in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Like, he was one of the few things that I actually got some amount of happiness or enjoyment out of. I know that most people hated him, but like, no, this was almost the happiest I was that entire movie.
Not they're not working with limited resources where you have to be very disciplined about what you spend your money on, and that's the difference.
For maintaining control of your
fucking ads, I don't care. See, I don't like. I just, it's so weird to me that they don't connect these two ideas, because these two ideas are kind of contradictory. And like, I don't know, is that going to be the whole point that I'm making this entire video? Like, I guess I'm just, you know, I'm doing this on a whim, but it just feels so weird to me. Also, I know that Binge Bureau's face is covered up. I am leaving it that way for your benefit, I suppose.
Just bad mark.
I mean, I guess my face is covering it, so like, I don't know. You win some, you lose some.
I mean, the fact that the theaters are effectively failing, the fact that you can't open a movie anymore, that there's certainly no stars except for Tom Cruise, apparently, who can open a movie. The star system is completely destroyed. And the fact that the streamers are beginning to start to lose subscribers, the budget on these movies is inherently...
That is so bizarre to me that that's a thing that we care about. Like, that big stars are a thing that matter. And I know I've seen Critical Drinker talk about this before too. I don't remember the exact like conclusions that he came to. But movies that are not just starring big names are kind of a good thing, like are kind of a cool thing. Like, I enjoy going to a movie and not like having everybody's face just be automatically immediately recognizable, right? I mean, like, what was Mark Hamill like a gigantic movie star in 1977? I don't believe so. I guess I like maybe he was the Tom Cruise of his era, but I'm pretty sure that's not the case. And you know, like, there are actors that are really, really good at like taking me out of it. Colin Farrell is a fantastic example. If you haven't seen Colin Farrell in anything, like, I implore you to go and watch numerous Colin Farrell movies, because he is that man can fucking act. He is a completely different character in every movie that he's in, at least every movie that I've ever seen him in. He's good. He's fantastic in The Lobster. Obviously, he's really good in The Batman. Banshees of Inisherin. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember Phone Booth being a good movie. Like, Colin Farrell is fantastic. but I mean, like, he's a really good actor. Like, I go to watch a movie because I know he's going to be really good at it, not just because I, like, recognize name and, you know, recognize name make dopamine rush. Like, I don't know. It's just so weird that that's a thing that they're concerned about.
Going to drop. And you would imagine that as that budget drops, there are going to have to be people who are able to use a $30-40 million budget and make something that's actually pretty good.
I mean, look at the John Wick series, for example. It's become extremely popular. That started out with John Wick 1, and it was 15, maybe 20 million at most that cost to make.
And it's the best of the series still.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like you've got a neat little thriller with great action sequences and stuff. It doesn't have to cost the earth. And that, I think, is where we're probably heading, because the assumption was we would go in that direction after COVID. The lockdowns closed down a lot of theaters, and
I haven't seen John Wick, and I don't know. I don't feel like I'm providing much commentary here, but there's also not a ton of stuff to say. They're talking pretty slowly and not being super substantive.
It really shrunk audiences, because there's a certain number of people, I suppose, who just wouldn't go back to movie theaters after that. They just didn't want to be in that crowded place, and so audiences' attendance would be lower. The budgets had to come down. It didn't quite happen that way. They still kept making these crazy $200-300 million movies.
I think one of the things that COVID also did, which was interesting, is that it made clear the stuff that you actually want to see on a big screen and the stuff that you actually don't care about. And I think those aren't quite the same as Hollywood thought they were. So Hollywood thought, okay, big action sequences with superheroes blowing things up, and no one's going to want to watch that on their phone or on their TV. They're going to want to go to a theater to see that. And the truth is, it kind of looks the same in a theater as it looks on your phone. But what
there's a little bit of truth to this, in that there are movies that you really don't need to see in theaters. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're going to get a perfectly good experience out of it. And unfortunately, in terms of the actual, like, combat and stuff in, like, Avengers Endgame, which is what they were showing clips of, like, that's kind of true. Avengers Endgame was a fantastic movie to see in theaters because it felt like a cultural experience. And because, like, all of those moments were kind of set for a theater, but the actual action and stuff didn't really matter all that much. By contrast, and I know that these people favorably compare these all the time, even though I don't think that they have, like, the basic media literacy to comprehend them. Movies like Godzilla -1, phenomenal to see in theaters. Oppenheimer, phenomenal to see in theaters. Even Barbie was really good to see in theaters, like, because there's something about the film that is really enhanced by that experience. In the case of like Godzilla, having a captive audience, when the movie, minor spoilers I guess technically, like, when it gets silent, like, you can hear a pin drop in that room. And I've went to see it twice in theaters because I liked it that much. You know, Oppenheimer, like, it gets loud and it's surrounding you, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. It makes you feel almost like claustrophobic, you know, whereas watching it on your phone would definitely not produce that effect, and watching that in, like, a standard, you know, middle-class living room probably wouldn't also replicate that effect. So I don't know, I guess there's kind of truth to that, but it's not a super, I don't think that's the reason why movies are not good anymore.
doesn't is Oppenheimer, right? What actually doesn't look the same in the theaters as it does on your phone is Dune. Right, the stuff that's actually kind of truly artistic and creative, that stuff you actually do need to see in a theater. Like,
Ben Shapiro and I agree on a movie take. You can take me away now.
regret that I saw Dune first time on my phone. Like, that was a mistake. I should have gone and seen that in a theater, and it felt the theater rumble when the ships are landing. And I felt the same way with Oppenheimer. I first saw it in a non-IMAX theater, then I saw it in an IMAX theater again. And the first time I saw it, I was like, this is a big movie. And then in the IMAX theater, it's an even bigger movie. And that's a biopic, which is insane. I mean, again, Nolan, he's amazing at what he does, except for Tenet.
I really want to see Tenet because I don't know. I don't actually have any hot takes on it. I really want to see that movie, but also, like, I can't bring myself to actually put in the effort to go see it.
That was too much Christopher Nolan in one movie, I think.
Oh my gosh, that was the end of him playing with time. You would hope. Like that was like he's now explored this idea down to the marrow where there's nothing left to do. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what Nolan does next. I'm always fascinated. He's the only person who announces a movie and I buy my ticket like 2 years in advance.
This feels so bland. I mean, okay, granted, I don't think that either of these people have like meaningful, deep understandings of filmmaking. Or at least if they do, they don't show it. And I think Ben Shapiro just flat out doesn't. Like, I think he just doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. Critical Drinker seems to me like someone who's like suspending his intelligence to cater to a less intelligent political movement. But like, this just feels so boring. Like, if I were a fan of these people, this would be such a bland conversation. Like, it's literally just people repeating the opinions that they've already expressed to me, but in a less exciting fashion. Like, when I go to watch a conversation between two people, like, I'm interested in seeing them like actually dig into stuff, and this just feels like nothing, you know? Like, this is the stuff that they edited down. Like, this was the stuff that was good enough to put in your YouTube video. I don't know. It just to me suggests that like they really don't have anything super meaningful or thoughtful to say. They're just they're just saying shit, you know?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's one of those directors where you genuinely get excited to see what he's going to come up with next. And Oppenheimer was a great example of it. You know, it seemed like the kind of film that wasn't going to appeal to a mass audience because ultimately it's a historical biopic. It's not action-packed. It's very much grounded in reality, and it's told in
very much grounded in reality. I feel like the whole point of the color scenes in particular, at least according to Nolan, was that they weren't really grounded in reality, but. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to like get super heavy on like a dumbass like soundbite or anything there, but that just feels to me like maybe a minor misreading of the film potentially.
The form of flashbacks and so on, so it's quite a complex movie and it's long. All of those things should count against it, and yet it was massively successful. It's great to see. It's great to know that there is still a huge audience for films like that.
So to be clear, directors being given huge budgets and the ability to run wild is bad. Like that's what's making movies bad right now. But also, movies are bad because they're not creative, and somehow these two facts are the same, but we've given no reason to connect them. But also, giving directors license to do whatever they want is good when we like it being done. Like this, these things could all maybe be true if you actually gave some you actually connected the thoughts. But you're just saying a bunch of disconnected ideas that. Without any sort of connective tissue, just come across as like completely contradictory, because I really just don't think that they've thought about it very much. I think they like Oppenheimer and they like Christopher Nolan, so they're like, oh, it must be because Christopher Nolan is given license to do whatever he wants. Oh, well then modern movies must be bad because Taika Waititi is given license to do whatever he wants. And it's like, okay, what are modern movies just bad because of Taika Waititi, and like modern movies would be good because of Christopher Nolan? Or is there maybe something a little bit more complicated or more interesting going on there? Like is it just Rian Johnson? Is that why movies are bad now?
And hopefully we see more of it.
Well, I really appreciate this conversation. This has been, again, a great break from the world, and now I'll have to get back to, I think, talking about World War III.
I kind of want to see, like, okay, I always say that I want to see the comments, and then they're never interesting, but I do kind of want to see, Critical Drinker is at this point the only film review. Yeah, they keep saying that, and they keep just like not watching movies that he doesn't like without actually thinking about them. The team we never knew we needed. What did you get out of this? Like, what did a person who's a fan of these people get out of this interaction? It was this was just meaningless. There was no, I don't know. There was no interesting exploration of ideas, I guess, and that's really frustrating to me. Because Critical Drinker, at least to me, comes across as a person who could have interesting takes or thoughts on something, if he wasn't like being super head ass about everything, you know, like if he wasn't appealing to like the lowest common denominator. I don't think he's ever said I've never heard him say anything revolutionary or whatever, but like I feel like there's got to be something in there. There's got to be something rattling around in there as compared to like, I mean, obviously like, you know, dumbest person, you know, guy who peaked in 8th grade, like whatever. But yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else that I should be going over here or discussing? Because otherwise, I guess we can end it here. It was a good time, you know. It was a chill time, but I don't know. There's just something so bizarre to me about content like this, that I struggle to put my finger on. Like I feel nothing, you know. It's like, even when I feel like, oh, hey, wow, they've contradicted themselves, like I really just feel like, oh, I guess I'll point that out. But yeah, that's too bad. This was the collaboration that I never knew I needed and wish that I never had to experience, you know, like not because it was egregiously bad, but because it was nothing, you know. It was a nothing experience, and I just shared that nothing experience with the rest of you. Well, yeah, then I guess we will, you know, we will cut this short here. I know that the microphone peaked at least at one point. But, you know, what was it I said before? You win some, you lose some.